due to the confusion of publicity surrounding Venezuela, a lot of people in Britain really don't understand what's happened in Venezuela. The basic gist of it all is that Venezuela has got a lot of resources, especially oil, a very large oil supply. The global corporatists of this planet want to get their hands on it, and they would like to cut out the millions of Venezuelan people in that process. So therefore, sorry, this belongs to us, not you. Get back to your shanty towns, living on $2 a day, with virtually no human rights, no easy access to electricity, water, just suffer, no healthcare, no education. Okay? Take a look at Africa, another very resource-rich continent, land. Again, every African country, full of resources, the corporations are in there, the people are marginalised. Nothing for you. We've all seen the starving children, the children, war-torn regions. Why? Why is there all this conflict in Africa? Because conflict is what keeps the people down, these conflicts, and in the meantime the corporations are there backing the military and at the same time helping themselves to Africa's resources. And this is the same thing that's going on in Venezuela. Now Chavez, he came up from the people, he was a military man himself, and he decided to go for a fairer distribution of wealth. You could not compare what Chavez established in Venezuela to Soviet communism or the communism of China. You're talking a socio-capitalist society. Yes, private business interests are protected, are welcomed. Big corporate interests, no. A fairer even distribution of the wealth, the country's resources, the wealth of the country is spent on the people. You see a very similar process happening in Norway, in quite a few European nations where the distribution of wealth is reasonably fair. Not everybody is, there's some rich people, there's some poor people, but nobody is left destitute. Nobody's left without a home, nobody's left without education, nobody is left without a living wage or some form of income. Nobody's left without health care. So this is what President Chavez had established in Venezuela, much to the horror of the corporations and all the corporate hangers-on, the top tiers of Venezuelan society, who'd been having a very nice time while the majority of the Venezuelan people were living in squalor and degradation, raising their children in the dirt. Okay, they were quite happy living the Western dream, buying their Christian Dior handbags and their Yves Saint Laurent lipsticks and suits and what have you. So that's basically what happened. The corporate cabal, the criminal corporate cabal that is running our planet, did not like it. And all the governments that serve the criminal cabal, like America, like the British government, whether it was Tony Blair or Theresa May, Cameron, Trump, Obama of America, we're talking corporate governments. These are not truly elected governments. They do not consist of people that have risen from the ground. They're people who are put in place by organisations like, for example, the Bilderbergs. Okay, they're endorsed people who are known to be corporate, either overtly corporate if they're a Tory in Britain, or covertly corporate if they're a Blairite Labour. That is what has been going on. And it is all about denying resources and rights and law and a living wage, reasonable living standards to the people. It's about denying them. It's about giving the bulk of a nation's wealth to corporate interests and maintaining this actually criminally insane global ruling body who gets to dictate what happens in every nation. They control the press, they control the governments, they control the World Bank, they create catastrophes like this economic crash. Is all their creation through actual crime. Okay. Now, President Chavez sadly died of cancer. There was an attempted coup against him which he survived, but he died of cancer a few years ago now. And the people, nonetheless, have decided to stick with their socio-capitalist society. As I say, we're not talking communism by any stretch of the imagination. We're talking a socio-capitalist society, very much along the lines of what was established in Britain by the British people after World War II. A socio-capitalist society. Okay? Now, the people have democratically elected Maduro as their president. The far right of Venezuela have refused to participate in the elections. They've refused to vote. They've refused to stand any member of parliament, to represent them, to be president. Okay? They have completely refused to participate in it. Maduro's won the election that the people chose to vote, and he is the democratically elected leader of Venezuela. Now, since Venezuela's had the benefit of a socio-capitalist government as opposed to a corporate communist government, because that's what we're talking about, that is what they impose on the people of every nation they take control of. You're dealing with corporate communism. Okay, you live by their rules. Everywhere you go, you're into their rules. You enter their courts, you have to abide by their rules that override, that ignore the common laws of that land. Corporate law takes control. You step into a workplace, suddenly you're operating under corporate law. Never mind your rights, your human rights, your workers' rights. You've signed this 0-hour contract here, otherwise, sorry, no job for you. Oh, what are you going to do? There's no benefit system anymore. You see, this is what we're talking. Cutthroat capitalism. That is corporate communism. The majority of the workforce are left in the dirt and the filth, and they will rob you of everything. They will rob a baby of its health care. That is what we're dealing with. Okay. The Venezuelan people have told them to get lost. So now we've got this guy, Juan Guaidó, who has announced himself opposition leader, and he's announced himself president. He had his own little inauguration, surrounded by a crowd of people all waving Venezuelan flags, and oh yes, he is our president. He's not been democratically elected. He has not stood for election. He has not shared with the people what his proposals are for Venezuela. He has just announced himself president. Donald Trump has decided to accept him, congratulate him. And the French president, and also Theresa May. Is that any surprise? That evil witch, criminal woman, presently lodged at number 10, like a bad tooth. As I say, we'll need a pair of pliers to pull her out of there. Now, this is a serious matter for British people now to think about. That our government is voicing support for a non-democratically elected leader to take over Venezuela. Now, the last time that happened was in Chile. And in Chile, it was Pinochet who murdered how many people? You don't even want to think about it. Now, the Venezuelan people, under their democratically elected socio-capitalist government, now have the benefit of social housing, education, healthcare. Yes, people have been suffering. There have been shortages of various daily essentials. Why? Not because the government's failed. No, because of the sanctions. The sanctions that have been placed on Venezuela by the US. The countries that have refused to do business with Venezuela. So the people suffer. And the hope is that by issuing those sanctions, then the people are going to revolt, they're going to blame the government, and then they'll get rid of the government. But the Venezuelan people aren't stupid, because they know that with or without sanctions, with sanctions under a socio-capitalist government, they have a better life than they would under a corporate communist government. Because that's what they are. They're corporate communists. It's corporate communism for the majority. Capitalism is only for them. The little small businesses do not flourish. We have witnessed that in Britain. We have witnessed all our family-run small businesses have disappeared, been gobbled up by these global corporations. This is what I'm talking about. Wake up to it, people, because it's serious. It is serious. What is going on in this world today is very, very serious. These are not the days for sitting back and having a laugh at the latest soap. These are the days for getting seriously active now and asking some serious questions of the people that are allegedly representing us, either as Tory, Labour, whatever. And we need to get savvy. Now, when we have, Theresa May has the audacity to criticise the elections in Venezuela. Okay? She has the audacity to criticise the elections in Venezuela. This is a woman, this is a party that's got in on 2 rigged elections. Check the bloody postal votes. The 200,000 votes that went missing in the stolen van that have never been found. The way the British voting system works, 200,000 votes could swing an election. And even so, it couldn't swing an election to get a fully elected into power, could it? Because she had to form yet another coalition government. Even with their postal vote shenanigans, as they tried with David Cameron, even with their 200,000 votes, voting slips that they had, even with the rigged postal votes, we know what they do. They couldn't do it. And she has the audacity. This is a government, this is a parliament that invaded Iraq in order to establish democracy. Apparently they invaded Libya in order to establish democracy. And here they are, here she is, the criminal woman herself, standing there, voicing support behind a total imposter, a usurper, a criminal actually, who's decided to ignore all the principles and rules of a democracy and instead just announce himself president. What? And he gets the support of the British government, he gets the support of the United States of America, he gets the support of France. Well, we all know what the French people think of Emmanuel Macron, don't we? Yes, indeed we do. Well, what do we British people think of Theresa May? And I tell you now that that woman is a threat to this country, and that Tory party is a threat to this country, and all of the far-right extremists that they have created with their policies and their rhetoric, the hatred that they have instigated in Britain against the poorest people, against the most vulnerable, weakest people of our society, have fallen under attack. under their government. The British people are poorer. Their health is poorer. Our health is poorer. Our national security is under threat. People don't feel safe in their own communities. Crime rates are sky high. Oh, apparently they've brought unemployment down. What? The kind of unemployment that people have to go and queue outside food banks. I tell you, the people of France are not yet at that stage where they're queuing outside food banks. Okay? That the workforce are having to queue outside food banks. They are not at that stage yet. If they were, I tell you, they get to that stage, you'll see a lot more than yellow vests. Now, I'm not instigating the British public to violence, but I am saying to the British public, you do need to stand up for your rights. Because, you know, standing against is never going to work against. It isn't going to help us. You stand up for. You stand up for your human rights, you stand up for your children's rights, you stand up for your rights as were defined and granted by the people who sacrificed their lives for this country. The people of World War II, who established exactly what has been established in Venezuela, a socio-capitalist society that favours the small business, that favours some nationalised industries, that provides for people. So you've got your nationalised industry, like, for example, in Venezuela, their nationalised oil will pay for the public services, the social housing. So that's not a heavy burden of tax then on the individual owned businesses, private businesses. But no, these corporations, they don't want that. They want all the tax to fall on the people. They will profit even off the services that those taxes from the people are paying for, and then corporations themselves will pay no tax and in fact will get a subsidy, a government subsidy for running the service. That is what is going on, and it is so clear, it's so clear, so simple, that when people finally, when the penny finally drops and people realise that, look, the distraction of immigration, the distraction of the Muslim terrorist, okay, the distraction of Trump, the distraction of Brexit, it's all a facade. It's all a distraction specifically to take your eyes off that ball. And the ball is your children's future. The ball is this planet that we are living on. And who owns it? And who controls it? And who has a say? Well, according to the global corporation, a handful of people should decide the fate of billions. A handful of people who, by far and large, we know it, are intellectually disabled because they are bereft of empathy, they are bereft of compassion. And actually, they don't know really anything about real life in the real world that they vamp off and live in the clouds on. Now, I would like to know what Jeremy Corbyn and his Labour Party and any member of the opposition are now doing in Parliament when you are sat in Parliament, apparently led by a woman who throws her weight behind an undemocratically elected so-called self-professed president. Some guy who stands up in a nation and says, I am president, with his army of supporters around him. And she is abusing her power. She's abusing her power. That is a criminal abuse of her power to voice support for any such individual in any nation. When that nation has a democratically elected leader, when the democratically elected leader of that nation is committed to looking after and caring for the people of the nation. The opposite of what Theresa May has done. Do not forget that the United Nations has repeatedly condemned Britain for the levels of poverty its policy of austerity has inflicted on the poorest and most vulnerable people, on the children Yes, the Tories said they want the British workforce to be compatible with that of Asia. Well, go and have a look at the Asian workforce, British people, and have a look at your future. Have a look at your children's future. I don't care whether you supported Brexit, whether you like immigrants or don't like immigrants. Look at the people, the workforce of Asia. That's your children's future, with or without immigrants, whether or not we are in or out of the EU. That is what they want to deliver to the British people. And actually now we're out of the EU, apparently that's going to give this government the freedom to just abandon all our rights. Because apparently we only had rights because we entered the EU, did we? I thought that men like my grandfather gave their lives for those rights. I thought the Human Rights Act was actually formulated by 2 British lawyers. And voted for by the people, accepted by the people. And now this Tory government, oh well, you know, now we're out of the EU, we don't have, you know, we can scrap, we're going to scrap human rights. Britain is a nation that is sleepwalking into oblivion. The people of Iceland, oh no, they said, go away. You think you're going to dump an unrepayable debt on our children and their children and children's children forever and ever? You think you're going to dump us in austerity? Go away. We are arresting you, bankers, for your criminal activities. We are not going to pay for your theft and crime. Britain, oh yeah, bring it on, bring it on. Come on, let's see the kids on the sanctions, on the street, begging, homeless. You know, let's have hundreds of thousands of people homeless and begging on the streets in Britain. Let's start arresting them for begging. Let's start fining them. And then we get the EDL trying to usurp the yellow vest campaign in France, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, what the French yellow vest people are actually protesting about is very, very far, far, far removed from the likes of the EDL and UKIP. They're not asking for Brexit, are they? They are asking for freedom from the corporate control. They want it gone. They want it out of their country because they're witnessing what we in Britain are already living through. And they've seen the writing on the wall and they don't want it there, thank you very much. But this now, again, like I say, Jeremy Corbyn, what are you doing? What are you going to do now then? So you're going to stay sat in that parliament, are you? All you MPs, you're going to stay sat there. You're going to tolerate this criminal woman now, Theresa May, calling herself Prime Minister. You're going to tolerate her. I'm sorry, there needs to be another general election. She has to go. Because that is a criminal act for a democratically elected leader of Britain to throw their weight behind an unelected, self-appointed leader of a nation like Venezuela. And when that very act that she has done has put millions of Venezuelan lives at risk, because we've all seen what happens when exactly this thing happened in Chile with Pinochet. Millions of people's lives are at stake here. And by her voicing now her support for Juan Guaidó, she has put lives at risk in another nation, and she has denigrated Britain. And that then does put our own national security at risk as British citizens, because if we're being governed by the kind of leader that is quite happy to support an undemocratically elected leader, well, not even elected, an undemocratically, a self-appointed leader over and above an elected leader that is actually serving his people and upholding his human rights. This is a woman who supports Saudi Arabia, who cannot even honour the human rights of its own citizens and is starving children in the Yemen. But when it comes to Maduro, a democratically elected leader who is trying to establish his people's human rights, who is upholding them, who is providing for his people. When it comes to him, she's prepared to stand against him to support this Juan Guaidó, who is the very opposite. He wants to deliver the very opposite of human rights. He wants to do exactly what Theresa May wants to do to the British people. He wants to do to the vast majority of the Venezuelan people, to deny them their human rights. And that's exactly what this Tory government wants to do. And it's time the British people woke up to it. Like I say, forget the distractions. Forget about the immigrants and the Muslims and this and that. Start thinking about your humanity. Start thinking about your children's future. And start asking questions about this filth, this criminal filth that is now sitting in Parliament. And ask yourself, who are these MPs who can stomach sitting facing their prime criminal representative in the form of Theresa May? Who can stomach listening to her, voice her support, to stand with the sex offender Donald Trump? No, it is time. It's time, people. It is time to let these people know. And as I say, you don't stand against. You don't need to stand against. You know, Bob Marley, Robert Nesta Marley, God bless him, he knew what he was talking. Babylon system is the vampire. Stand up for your rights, people. You can't fight against them. Okay? Protesting. If you want to protest, the way to protest is to stand up for your human rights. To stand up for your child's rights. That's the way to protest. That's the way of effective demand. You demand your human rights. Those are our rights. Because our human rights are at risk here. And I tell you, without them, without your human rights, you've got nothing, people. Nothing. Life really is a lottery. It's a lottery as to whether you're going to get any food that day. Okay? That's the level of existence that this government are bringing the British people right back down to now. That is the level of existence, that it's going to be a lottery whether you get something to eat that day. What you will be eating, it's a lottery. What will be available at the food bank. So this is a very, very, very serious situation, and actually I absolutely, what can I say, I feel like my country, the government running Britain now is, it is treasonous. It's a treasonous sham of a democracy. It's a corporate whore. And that's what she is, a corporate whore, a gangster's moll. And what does that make the Queen of our country, that can tolerate, the Queen who's supposed to be upholding the constitutions, the law of the people, that she will tolerate a Prime Minister who will stand by an unelected, self-appointed leader who's standing against the democratically elected leader of his nation. That is Sorry, that's it. Reality. These people have got no credibility anymore whatsoever. They can't talk about law. They can't talk about democracy. They can't talk about rights. Nothing. These people are nothing. They are nothing but corporate whores. Now, look what happens to the common prostitute on the street. Look at the judgments that society casts on them, the sex workers. How they get locked up. Okay? Well, here we have a corporate whore of such major significance that she's put the lives of millions, the lives and health and safety and rights of millions of people at risk. Abroad and in Britain. Because, you know, look what she's doing to her own people. No. So, you know, thank you for taking time to listen. Yes, I know I get passionate. My life experience is what I've had to survive. I can't afford to live on the surface, okay? I swim deep, okay? I've swam the depths. I know what is going on in this world. I've had to survive it. That's why I'm here, okay? I've had to survive the depths of the reality of this world. So I understand. And so, you know, that's why I do what I do. I share the information, try to wake people up, try to enthuse people to explain how important this is, because, you know, the media has conspired to keep everything on a surface level, and it's all a very glossy veneer, isn't it? Well, I tell you, underneath that glossy veneer, you really don't know what rot lies beneath, and I do know it. And I do care. I care about my fellow British citizens. I care about my fellow humanity on this planet. I care about the life of this planet. We've still got Fukushima to deal with yet. That's there boiling away in the background. Everybody pretending, oh, it isn't really happening. Well, it is, and you are going to realise it. But I tell you, we are never going to be able to deal with that while ever we've got these kind of shenanigans going on in the world, while we've got these criminal cabal leaders swanning around, corporate whore politicians, corporate whore media. So I'm going to leave you some links underneath this video. Please watch them. Please understand the severity of what we are dealing with right now on our planet and in our nations, because this is a global affair now, and it is up to the people, of all the good people from all walks of life in every nation, to come together and stand up for what is right. We had 2 world wars in this world, and if we're going to have another one, then let it be that let them fight against us, because we are standing up for our rights. Okay? So, love and God bless to everybody.